This build series was kindly brought to you over by the folks over at Agora Models. They have not paid me to say or do anything, they just supplied me with the full kit to build and showcase for you guys. Now this is a step-by-step build. All of the parts are already pre-painted and pre-detailed, so you just simply need to snap them together or just screw them together. Some cases, both. Now in this case I'm starting off with package 1, and that has a random part in it which you will not need for many more packages in the future, but it is a cool steering wheel to see and also to showcase the amount of detail that has gone into this kit. Now this first episode is just going to be based on the engine itself, assembling all of it and showing what the end result is after a couple of packages. Now if you're interested in purchasing one of these for yourself, go to agoramodels.com. I will be leaving the links in the description down below. And for now, that's pretty much it for me. I will just be highlighting a couple of highlighted areas in the video with a little voiceover, but not going overboard, as it's just pretty much simply assembling it and following the instructions. So the first step is pretty much completed with the valve covers, so I can move on to the carburetors next. I believe this small part that I'm installing right here is the fuel rail, and that simply needs to be snapped in place. However, the fitment was a bit loose, making it very easy to put in place, but also making it very easy to fall out of place if you don't want it to. So therefore I'm just using a little bit of glue just to make sure that it doesn't fall off. With the carburetor is now completed and some intake stuff added to it as well, we can focus on the main engine block and all the accessories. Now even though most of the parts are already painted, some are not and are pretty clearly still plastic and not have a really realistic look. Now even though I noticed a lot of these parts, I'm not going to touch these up. As I've explained earlier, these builds are just relaxing and fun for me, just assembling and not focusing too much on painting, detailing, and all the other stuff. Now on the other hand, if you would like to do it, this is a fantastic base to start off of, as there are already a lot of details on the parts themselves, and with a bit of paint, maybe a little bit of weathering and additional detailing, these kits can turn into something amazing. Now straight out of the box they are already really cool, but again it is a really cool base to start off of and get it even better. Now with that said and done, in the meantime the engine has been pretty much completed, so I could put my attention towards the frame. Now this is already pre-painted in red, same as all the other parts that are pre-painted or pre-colored plastic, and they don't really need any further attention. Now if you do want to repaint this entire kit, so to speak, these would also need to be stripped and painted at the same time as the exterior, as these frames have the exact same color as the exterior. With most of the frame for the front now completed, a couple of additional parts will be added later on, but some other stuff needs to be done first, and that is mainly just all of the suspension, the brakes, and even some steering components. Now most of the front frame and all of the suspension and steering components have been completed, so the engine could slide in place too before I could start focusing on the firewall. If you plan on making the lights in this kit functional, then this is the time to add the batteries. They are underneath the oil pan and they will need to be installed prior to assembling the kit fully. You can take off the oil pan later on, but it is quite a snug friction fit, so it's not really that easy to get off, but I kind of don't have the batteries at the moment, so the only option was to just put the oil pan in place, and then I'll figure it out once I get to the end of the build if it is still a doable job to remove that and insert some batteries, but again, we'll see it when we cross that road. So one thing I noticed when installing all of these wires is that some of the fitment is pretty loose and the wires themselves are quite springy, so they can quite easily jump out of place and not be attached anymore to where they need to be. So my advice would be to simply just use a small amount of super glue to keep them in place permanently and not chase wires all the time and eventually find some loose wires on the ground. After tidying and gluing up the final wires in place, I could then move on to putting the firewall and front chassis and engine all together. Now this wasn't as easy as I make it seem here, as I needed to avoid a lot of crimping and pinching of some wires. The steering column needed to go through a hole, the transmission needed to fit in perfectly, and all of the points from the frame needed to fit exactly into the places they needed to slot into on the firewall. And I'm not really capable of showing that all too well on camera, but it's just mainly fiddling, checking the instructions and making sure you're not crimping or hitting anything, and everything should slide in place. Then it is all screwed down. The transmission is also held in place with some transmission mounts. These again are also screwed down, and that finishes off this first half of the build. Next up, I'm going to be moving on to the chassis, probably some of the wheels as well, and then maybe after that we're going to move on to the interior and finishing off the entire build. Now again, thank you very much Agora Models for sending this kit out, and if you're interested in checking it out for yourself, I will be leaving links down in the description below to agoramodels.com.